Hey, welcome back to the Connor Larsen Show. This week, I want to do an episode about Snow Crash, the book from Neal Stephenson. I've been having moments more and more where I just see the real world that we live in mirroring this book. And I've always talked about I'll tell my buddies, we'll be driving to do comedy somewhere, and I'll tell them about this, and they'll be like, that doesn't sound right. Because it's uncanny how much this book has come to predict our world. But that's why I thought it'd be a fun episode. So yeah, let's just dive into it. It's a book, and it's a pretty amazing book because, Meta, which you've probably heard, is a company. Meta, the reason Meta is called Meta is this book. Metaverse, that phrase was defined in this book. The author came up with it. And it's incredible when you start to realize, like, Silicon Valley and the people who do a lot of, shaping our world today, they all read this book and they all sort of took stuff from it. I would argue the wrong stuff. I would argue that they read a dystopian novel as a good idea, but we'll get into that later. But anyway, the book, just so you have a quick grasp of it, there's a character named Hero Protagonist. Incredible name. And he's a hacker, and he lives in the real world. He also lives in the metaverse. In the metaverse, he's kind of a celebrity. And in the real world, he is so broke, he lives in a storage unit, which is, more than, he's not the only guy doing that. But that reminds me there's a lot of content creators like that, where they're crushing it online, and then you hang out with them, or comics, you're crushing it online, you hang out with them, and you go, whoo, this is tough. So anyway, Hero Protagonist, he's a gig worker in the metaverse, right? As we all may soon be. And he's delivering pizzas, and he meets this other courier person delivering pizzas. And then eventually they realize there's a malware, so to speak. There's a virus that is going around and changing people's brains and sort of taking away their ability to think. And they have to solve that. And that's the plot of the novel, which is, it's a great book. You should read it, but not that important for what we're talking about today. What I think is so amazing is, okay, so this guy, what do you mean when you say he predicted the metaverse? First of all, he came up with the phrase, right? It's, he combined universe and whatever, meta. So I should know that, but something. The online world, right? So he coined that phrase, and that's sort of the list of people who say reading this book gave them their idea for things that we all just accept as normal now is crazy. The guys who did Xbox Live, that's inspired by the metaverse. The guys who did Fortnite, the guys who did the actual metaverse, that's why that was so crazy. I read a thing where Neal Stephenson, the author of this book, he just got a text from a friend that said, sorry for your loss, and he didn't know what it meant. And then he checked, and it was Mark Zuckerberg had named, without asking him, had named the new project, the metaverse, and changed the name of Facebook, the company, to Meta. So that's how influential this book is to these tech guys. But it's the metaverse in the book is this alternate online world. It's a big street. It's got virtual real estate. There's virtual businesses and virtual art and virtual commerce. It's basically what they tried to do with Facebook. That's what made me want to do the episode now, is they just announced they're shutting it down, which is, they said we lost $80 billion and we're shutting it down, which I will argue that's a lot of leash before you. I worked at a TCBY that shut down, and I think we lost $500, and the guy who owned it was like, I'm done with this. I don't even want. So losing $80 billion, that's a lot of leash. But yeah, so, it is, people say the metaverse didn't work and that it doesn't, what a stupid move it was. But if you look around us, the metaverse, it kind of already exists, right? That's what Facebook is. That's what Instagram is. That's what online gaming is. They're virtual worlds where you interact with other people, and a big part of the book is the status, right? The status in the metaverse. If you're in the book, if you're a rich person, you got your avatar. It's nice looking. And if you're using like a public terminal, like a library computer to access the metaverse, you're all grainy and crappy looking. And that's how, look at Fortnite. Fortnite makes all its money selling skins to people who want to flex on other people. And you would hear that, at least I would, and be like, yeah, there's no way. How much money can be in this? I don't do the little microtransactions in video games. That seems insane to me. But clearly it works. And that's, Fortnite's another thing. And like that's That's the metaverse. Roblox, that's the metaverse. These things are all this guy in 1992, this is pre the internet. He predicted that we would all want to live in virtual worlds. And I'm not saying it's true. I mean, I'm not want to is the word I'm struggling with there, but that we would all end up living in virtual worlds and having lives that are, it's hard to always know what's more important, your real life or your virtual life. I mean, I think it's got to be your real life, and I try really hard to live my life in that way. But, you know, I'm a comedian. I see it all the time. There's people who, you know, you meet them and you go, whoa, this guy's life's a mess. But they're all about posting. They're all about getting online. They're all about getting the thing out there. And that's, you know, you talk to the people who aren't comics, who are sort of around comedy to make money off of it, like, you know, agents and managers and people. And that's the real metric. They go post, be out there, do online stuff. And it's, you know, it's an interesting deal because a lot of people who never would have had audiences before have gotten them from the internet. And I guess that's good. But at the same time, you know, you can lose sight of the right incentives. You can sort of become a person who prioritizes the internet over your real life. And I think part of what we all don't like about social media and the internet is that's sort of the problem, is you become a person who, I mean, I've seen so many couples fight taking a photo in front of like a waterfall, you know, where she's like, take a better picture. And he's like, I'm trying. But then you see the picture posted and it's like 3 years with my love. And you're like, that's not, I don't think you get I think that caption is wrong. I don't think you're in love. I think you've married your photographer. I think that, and that's how crazy it can get with all the, you know, trying to get likes. But it's, yeah, so he coins the term the metaverse. And I think that was, you know, first of all, crazy. Like called it. What a crazy, it's a half-court shot the guy made. And he talks about, you know, the future where we all, you know, they're basically in the book, people, some of them just get food and water through like a drip line so that their real life body can stay alive, but they just want to live in the metaverse. So they're like in a storage unit getting nutrients so they can be in the metaverse. Which I would argue, you know, I have friends who, given the chance, would live their life that way. They really would. And it's scary to me, but that's one of the really interesting parts of this book. And then, so the next thing I thought was so interesting in this book is he nails in this book, corporations have become the state. Basically, the government has failed and corporations are now the government, which I would argue that's where we're headed. I think Amazon, you basically watch in real life, Walmart is probably more powerful than the state of Arkansas. They make a lot of decisions, and we know how much corruption and connection there's between huge businesses. And, you know, who do you think's got more influence? Mark Zuckerberg or a congressman? I think it's Mark Zuckerberg, hands down. And that's when you start to realize that, man, I think the power of these things has shifted. How good is the government at handling things? Not that good at it. So how long till people move to private businesses for things? And I think that's where we're headed. You know, and it's an interesting. So this book also nailed that. In this book, they're called franchise organized quasi-national entities, which I love. That's I love whenever you start hearing jargon like that. When you hear people when you hear little abbreviations, like if you call customer service and they start throwing out abbreviations, that's how you know you're about to lose some money. You go, oh, you're throwing out abbreviations, you are not going to honor my warranty. That's what's going on, because they're just code to be like, we're doing what we want. So in this book, the United States is not the dominant entity. They have all these. There's like the Southern California presented by Coca-Cola, or there's a Cosa Nostra pizza, which is like, if Domino's in Italy were one place, and which arguably they're the same. I'm sure if you're Italian, I'm sure you'll agree that Italy is basically Domino's. And hope that should get a comment. I think that should get a comment or two. But so, yeah, it talks about, and you're already starting to see that in the real life. You're starting to see HOAs. I was reading about it. There are 70 million people in HOAs today, up from 2 million in the 70s. And 1/3 of all homes that are built are HOAs. And HOAs are nothing if not people being like, I want to be the government. I can't stand, I hate HOAs so much. I can't tell you how much it annoys me, the idea of your neighbor being like, cut your grass. You're like, dude, leave me alone. But that's again, I would argue that's where we're headed with all this sort of stuff. That's what the social credit score is in China. That's what there's this people want to have authority over other people, and it bums me out. I think that's not great. I think liberty is great, and I think it leads people to better lives. But you meet people, and they're like, I want to have control over my neighbor's what color he paints his door, and I go, I think you're crazy. I think you're unwell. But that has happened. So I do wonder, at what point they're already doing this. By the way, there's a place in Honduras. It's called Prospera Honduras, and it's a private company run by like billionaires, like Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, guys like that. And it's I think technically it's like headquartered in Delaware, or they've signed the documents, but they bought land in Honduras, started a community. They have their own private security force. They have their own private law code. And it's just, it's a corporation that started a town. And I don't know. I have no idea if that's better than the rest of Honduras or worse. I'm sure there are trade-offs, but it's fascinating to see. They're trying to do it. They're just saying the government is not the way we want to be organized. We want to have, corporations, which I would argue I've never had corporations. All you know about them is like, they don't care about you. Corporations are like zombies where everyone at the corporation could leave and it still exists. So its only goal is to make money. It's never looking out for people. So I would argue that's not great because in theory, the government could look out for you. I'm not saying they do, but they could. So it's a fascinating. That's to get that right in 1992, to see that trend, I just think is one of the most fascinating parts of the book, that he saw we are heading towards a world where, the corporation, is Amazon more powerful than the government? Kind of. How many people are on Instagram and Facebook? Way more than any country. Decisions that people make there, and like real decisions. I've had friends get, monetized or demonetized, and it affects their livelihoods. And it's like, these are just some crazy company. This isn't, they're affecting people's lives in real ways, and they're not held to any sort of specific standard. I guess there's some enforcement, but not much. So that's a fascinating part of the book, I thought. The next part of the book I want to talk about is, so they talk about what I think is so crazy is in the book, the big plot point is there's like a virus that's going around making people nuts. It basically takes their ability to think for them. And I would argue that has happened too with social media and memes and stuff. And when you look into this, it's like, yeah, it really has become, even if you're like trying real hard to think for yourself, how much of your life gets shaped by the stuff that's out there on social media that, even I talk to my friends all the time. We all know it's not true. We'll be like, it's probably AI, or that's, that guy's doing it for clicks or whatever. But it's just still, there's that quote, the color of your thoughts, that your thoughts, your mind takes on the color of your thoughts. That's what it is. And it's really, quotes work better when you nail them the first time. If you stumble on a quote, no one goes, that's deep. But the idea being, the stuff you think about, it does affect your perception of the world. If I watch a ton of videos of, if I watch a car crash compilation to go to sleep, the next day I'm a more paranoid driver. I'm looking at people being like, you're going to merge. I know you are. It just is like that. And I wonder if that's sort of where we're at, where you're just swimming around in this stuff. And a lot of it is, we know that they're incentivized to, it's like with newspapers when they used to say, if it bleeds, it leads, right? The bad stuff gets press, and the negative stuff and the stuff that makes you mad and the clickbait, that's what people want to see. For good reasons, right? In the past, you would want to know something that could have a negative effect on you, but I think they've sort of hijacked that part of our brain, and now they're just feeding you that. So you end up thinking the world's, a pretty horrific place. And so what's the connection to the book? In the book, this virus is taking people's ability to think, and I would argue that's what social media's done, right? We all talk about it. We all say like, it's making my uncle crazy. It's making my mom crazy. It's making whoever crazy, but it's also making us kind of crazy. And I think when you hang out with people, especially if you hang with people who like, I do comedy, so I hang out with people who are on all sorts of political spectrum. And a lot of them don't even mean it. A lot of them just go, what's a convenient angle? What will my audience want me to pretend to think? But anyway, you talk to people with all sorts of political beliefs, and they're fine. You know what I mean? That's what's weird about it. It's like most people. I started muting people on social media that were my friends because I was like, this just makes me dislike people that I otherwise like, which is not a good product, right? Anything that makes you dislike your friends is not helpful. And I think that people realize that this is a real thing. NATO and I think the Pentagon too, they now have branches that do meme warfare. That's because they've realized memes, really affect how people think. And I love that. That must be if you're in the meme warfare branch in the military, you must just be getting swirlies from Navy SEALs. They must just be hanging you by your underpants on a hook for hours. That's the lamest branch of the military I can imagine. The guys in Space Force are like, dude, that sucks. What you're doing, that's lame. That's how lame it must be to be in the meme warfare side of the military. But it is a real thing. It does. You look at how many memes just completely convince people of stuff that is not. That's the other thing too. I've done stand up in 48 of the 50 states. They're all kind of the same. They're not all the same, but they're similar enough that they're more similar than the people who live in them want to believe. People want to, you meet people all the time who are like, this town's going to hell. And you're like, why? Because you have a Dollar General? And then you meet people who are like, this is the greatest, most progressive town in the world. And you're like, this town is not any different. I'm glad you like homeless guys, but this town is just the same as all the other towns. They're not. I think that we get hyped up and make people seem worse or better than they are. But in reality, if you just hang with people, they're pretty normal. And I think that this book was early to catch on to like bad information distributed through the internet, in mass or through social media. It can really kind of make people crazy. And again, in 1992, what a good call. What a crazy thing to know that early. The other thing I love about this book is the gig economy. This guy nailed it. This guy saw that, there's basically going to be a few companies like YouTube and Meta and Facebook, and they're going to be able to, create this virtual world, and then we're all going to be competing for gigs within it. There's not that many jobs at YouTube, but there's tons and tons of people who make their living through YouTube. So it's an interesting. Again, I think it goes back to just like the breakdown of, in the book, the government is broken down. And so there's corporations taking over. And I think in real life, you start to see like companies just realize they can pay you less if they just Uber and Lyft were like, we don't need to hire a guy to be a cab driver. We can just give him money for this ride and not just sort of keep him at arm's length. And that's what I had a buddy. I used to have a roommate who worked at Uber as customer service. And the complaints he would get and do nothing about were stunning. He would get complaints that said like, I remember he got one, this one really got us. He got a complaint that said, this man driving the wrong way on the highway. Someone in the app wrote, they didn't go like, I should get out of the car, I'm going to die. They were typing, this man going the wrong way on the highway. And I said, what are you going to do? And he was like, we'll send him like a gift card, which is a hilarious. He goes like, all right, this death trap ride you're on, it's going to be free. It's going to be free. 1 star, right? That's got to be a 1 star. How was John's driving today? 1 star. This guy went the wrong way on the highway. That's got to be. But yeah, it's an interesting, you start to realize too, this book was, I think this author saw a lot of the future, which is just, when you can distribute things all at once via the internet and social media and all this stuff, it's just, people just go, I'll just hire a guy to do this one gig, but I'm not employing somebody full time because then I have to provide them steady work and benefits and all these things. And yeah, this guy was on it. He realized it early, and I think he must have known that we're going to end up in this weird world where corporations are crushing it more than they ever have, but people are kind of getting squeezed and being like, not really sure what to do here. So that was another thing that I thought was amazing. And I just love, I've always liked Neal Stephenson's books. They're great. They're huge. They're nerdy as hell. That's definitely true. You read those books and you go like, I think this guy's smarter than me. That's how you know what I mean? Like that's a lot of books. I don't feel that way. A lot of books I read and I go, I bet the author is tough to hang out with. But this one I go, golly, this guy is smart. He had a bunch of other stuff. He had a book, he had some books where he basically predicted Bitcoin, virtual currency on the blockchain, stuff like that, where you're like, hey man, if you predicted it, you should have made it. You would have made a lot of money. And so what the thing that I think is so interesting about this book is it became sort of the guide for these people who really went out and did it, right? Like Jeff Bezos, there's a story I was reading about. He read the book. They said this book used to be required reading for people working at Facebook. So clearly it was a big influence on them. The guys who did Second Life and Oculus and Xbox Live, they all said big part of their life. But Jeff Bezos, right, meets Neal Stephenson and they bonded over rockets, which is like, yeah, of course, that's what you would both be into. And he hired him to be, he's employee number one at Blue Origin, which is the space company or whatever, the Jeff Bezos space company. And it's just amazing to me that this guy wrote this book in 1992, and then all this stuff happened. The book gets some stuff wrong, like they thought it was all going to be goggles. People loved goggles. That was like a big. You look at like 90s cyberpunk stuff, it was all goggles, and I think it turns out smartphones are way more appealing than goggles. You can't get laid wearing goggles. That's the problem. No one is gonna just be like, I'm full time wearing goggles. There's some insane comedians who wear like Ray-Ban Meta glasses and talk to you, and you're like, "Hey, man, am I on a podcast I don't know about?" But I don't know. I think goggles are a tough sell. But yeah, it's interesting to see all these predictions sort of come true, and just how the guy did it. I don't know, if I wrote that book, that's all I would ever talk about to people. They'd be like, hi, my name is Sarah. And I'd go, I wrote a book that sort of predicted the future. My name's Connor. Like I would just shoehorn it in there. I'm hoping to do, I loved this book. I've read it when I was a kid. I read it again later as an adult. I want to read it again sometime in the near future. But I want to do all these books because this is one of those guys where if you read his books, it's really stunning the amount of stuff he just got right, and sort of how he thinks about the world in a way where you go like, oh, I guess I could have seen that coming, but I never put it all together. So much of the bad villain in the book is a big billionaire guy who's trying to spread this virus so he can take over people's thoughts, which arguably is what we're all mad at current billionaires about, is that they're trying to take over, they're trying to control the way people think, whether it's through social media or AI or these chatbots. I'm not that deep into. I think a lot of this stuff is interesting and not necessarily awful, and I'll be curious to see how it plays out. And I don't know that. I don't think the billionaires are sitting around going like, like that's. I don't think they're plotting in a layer, but I do. I just think it's like anything where they can do what they want. No one checks them because everyone wants money from them, and that leads to that makes you kind of crazy and a bad person. It's like how every hot girl is like. It's like they live their life on the Truman Show, where they're not. I'm not saying every hot girl is bad. I'm saying every hot girl fundamentally doesn't understand how the world works for the rest of us. Because it's like the Truman Show, that they're living one reality. And then when they leave, everyone's like, did you see that? And then so they don't even, they never realize that they're being treated differently. Or, like pro athletes are like this, where you read these stories where you go, God, how do they not realize how crazy they are? And it's because no one ever checks them on anything. It's the same. If you just let people do stuff, they eventually believe it's normal. They don't cosplay as a non-professional athlete for a week and go, oh, turns out I can't shove strangers. They don't do that because why would they? So I think the same thing with billionaires. They have too much. Well, I don't know if they have too much. They have the amount of power and money they have, and so they just do what they want, and then they get used to that, and then they stop seeing people as people or what, then it gets worse, but whatever. Yeah, it's a great book. And I think, I hope you liked this podcast. I really liked talking about it. I had a great time thinking about the book and trying to remember that stuff. I learned some stuff I didn't know, like that Honduras experiment is crazy. That's also like, it's exactly where a billionaire would, if they go, where do you want to make your little Sim City? They go, let's put it in Honduras. No one's checking what we're doing in Honduras. But yeah, it's a great book. And, if someone likes this podcast and they got a book they think I should read, send it in. I like doing that. I'd like to do episodes about that. This podcast, I'm really just doing whatever I'm thinking about currently. I'm going to do it. And, we'll find the rhythm as we go. We'll find it. I hope you guys like it. And if there's something interesting, I would like to deep dive into it and then sort of try to flesh out my thoughts and hopefully do, 30 good minutes on it for you because it's fun for me. So I hope you like this one. I'm about to get out into the garden. Every time I do a podcast, I want to get to the garden. It's like the opposite. You do this, you go, I got to post it on, blah, 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 and you get kind of crazy. And then you go outside and you're like, oh, all that matters is that if I go outside, it like the metaverse feels a lot less real, which is nice. I still got to do all that crap because comedy that's the gig. You got to post, you got to do you got to make content. But this is a fun way to do it for me. I like doing it like this. I hope you guys like it. And, it's a new podcast. So as always, if you can do the little stuff, it helps. If you can do the 5-star review wherever you're hearing this, if you can subscribe, if you can like it, that's great. And I really appreciate it. And I'm having a lot of fun doing this. So thank you very much for listening. I will see you next week.